Hi guys, and welcome to a new episode of A Dog's Soul. Today we're going to talk about if it makes sense to wean off treats gradually or at all, and what can we do instead of giving treats. I'm Anita, I'm a professional dog trainer. I show you how to build a trusting relationship with your dog to overcome fear and reactivity and have a good time together again. And if you haven't already, don't forget to like and subscribe. And now stay tuned and have fun. Alright, so it is a common recommendation that when we start working with treats, we should at some point start weaning off them gradually. So give treats more rarely and stop eventually. And the arguments for that are that the dog shouldn't show the behavior only when we have treats in our hand or at all on us. And we may run out of treats when we are somewhere. Or we might not want to take treats with us on every single walk. Or I even heard once that if you have treats with you, you attract wildlife. So, while these arguments all sound good, and yes, it can happen that we don't have treats with us because we lost them or we forgot them, but to be honest, I can't really forget treats. It's a ritual where before I go out the door, I just strap on my treat pouch and then take my jacket and then the keys, and I managed to forget the keys quite sometimes, but never the treat pouch. But yes, alright, it could happen. Theoretically, it could happen, and we could also run out when we have more tricky situations than expected on our walk, and we just needed more treats than usual, and we just ran out. Alright, it could happen. The wildlife thing, I don't know. Maybe in some parts of the world this might be true, where the wildlife is so used to humans that they really approach a human with a dog. For me, it sounds a bit far-fetched, but maybe it's really a thing. Okay. I, for my part, would not really like hiking in those areas anyway, because I have things to snack with me on hikes anyway, so that would, in that theory, attract wildlife as well. And if that's dangerous wildlife, I'm not sure I would want my dog and myself in that danger. But okay, let's say these arguments are all valid and we might need a dog who is reliable even if we don't have treats. Okay. In all my cases, even with dogs who were not food motivated, I never had a dog who did things only for treats. Why? Because this only happens when there are a few training mistakes involved. And number one mistake I see when people tell me this is that they only ask the dog to do things when they have the treat already in their hand. And yes, if I always show the dog the treat first and then ask for behavior, then of course the dog will connect this routine or this procedure and he will only do it in this context. Whenever I stop showing him the treat suddenly, he will not know what I want from him. That's because dogs are in that area really bad generalizing things, okay? So this could be one thing. Another thing could be that we really work only with treats. That's not necessarily a mistake, and I haven't seen dogs who only do things because treats are in the area or available or whatever, because they were trained only with treats. But maybe I've just not seen them. So if we want to vary the rewards a little bit, so one time the dog gets a treat, one time the dog doesn't get a treat but gets something else, we have to include those other rewards in our training. And a reward can be anything that is a reward for the dog. The learner always decides what is a reward and what isn't. So if I offer my dog, who is currently fixated on some kind of wildlife, a boring piece of kibble from my hand, this will not be a reward. And if I start shoving it toward him, it will become less and less a reward and more a punishment. Okay? So not only do I not reward my dog, but I am adding something uncomfortable. This is not good. Okay? So what we do want is something the dog really likes. And this can be, besides food, of course we can vary food a lot, but the most obvious besides food is a toy. Again, this is something we have to take with us and we could forget theoretically, but we could pick up things in the environment that could work as a toy, like pine cones and things like that. No rocks, please, and no sticks. Those are very dangerous, but a pine cone could work. Again, with a toy, I can vary the way I offer it to my dog very, very much. So this can be multiple versions of reward giving. But there are also things where I don't need anything with me. And that is, for example, letting my dog stalk wildlife, letting my dog follow a scent trail that is just there, letting my dog greet another dog, letting my dog watch another dog, letting my dog watch people, letting my dog greet people, letting my dog explore a pee spot after looking at me or whatever, running together, playing together. There are really a lot of different possibilities for environmental rewards. To be honest, everything the dog wants to do, we can use as a reward. I wouldn't always ask the dog to do something before I let him do what he wants, because it's just, in my opinion, a little bit too much. But if I have the need in me to stop giving treats, I can use environmental rewards, and I can always combine environmental rewards with treats, and I can always vary the rewards I give in general. So one time my dog gets this, one time my dog gets this, and one time my dog gets something completely different. What I wouldn't do is stop rewarding. Yes, there is a method called intermittent rewarding, where we do not reward every single repetition of a behavior. We only reward variably. So, for example, the third repetition, the fifth repetition, the ninth repetition, the 15th, whatever. And this makes a behavior very resistant to deletion. So, the best example for this is barking. Most people get annoyed by their dogs barking when they are stressed. When they aren't stressed, it's not that bad. So what happens is the dog barks. Sometimes the owner says something or yells at the dog, and sometimes he doesn't. And this makes the behavior very resistant. Of course, this is an example where punishment is used, not reward, but it's the same thing with rewards. Yes, this is a thing, but it is frustrating. And it doesn't make the behavior more reliable. We get a very reliable behavior with rewarding it every single time. Because, like every other animal, us included, dogs do things that are rewarding. So, if they see a squirrel and they watch a squirrel and they get a hormonal boost and it feels good, they will do it again. If they offer a sit and they get attention for it because they look so cute, they will try that again. And yes, attention can always be a very powerful reward depending on what we are doing and depending what the dog is doing. So, on the other hand, if we stop rewarding, the behavior will stop. There is a belief that after the dog is reliable in a behavior, he now knows what we want when we say something to him, and now he has to do it because he knows what we want. But there's nothing in it for him anymore. And so he won't do it. And this is where people get annoyed and yell at the dog. Because they expect the dog to know what he's supposed to do and to do it just because they tell him to do it. This is a very frustrating way of going at things for both sides. The dog doesn't see anything in it for him, but if he doesn't comply, there will be punishment. The owner is annoyed by the dog because he thinks the dog should know what he's supposed to do, and he just disobeys every single time, so he has to yell at the dog, and only then will the dog do what he's asked. And this is a circle that is just not fun anymore. So this is why it doesn't make sense to get off the treats completely or get off rewards completely. Why I wouldn't get off treats in particular is because it is the easiest form of reward we have. Easiest for us, not necessarily for the dog, but for us. It is a lot easier to take a dumb treat pouch with us and just give the dog a treat in different ways we can imagine than always knowing what the dog is just about to do and then use that as a reward, an environmental reward. That is a lot harder. Yes, it is more powerful, and yes, it makes a lot of fun, but doing only that is, in my experience, too difficult for us. So, yes, it might have some advantages to not needing treats with us, but if the dog only does things because we have a treat on us, there is a training mistake involved. And if we want to avoid those mistakes, we can, for example, when we teach some kind of behavior, always add repetitions where we don't have a treat pouch on us. For example, we are in our living room and the treat pouch is in the kitchen and we ask for a sit. The dog sits and we mark and we ask the dog to come with us to the kitchen to get a treat. The marker signal gives us time. The dog knows there is a reward coming, and we are teaching the dog that this thing, this signal, this cue is something we want even if we don't have treats on us. We should watch out for having treats in our hand already. So this happens a lot when We are recalling our dog when we are teaching loose leash walking. And on loose leash walking, I see that really often. So people are training loose leash walking, or they are actually training a heel with treats in their hand. The dog is constantly looking at them. And as soon as the treats are gone, the dog is no longer looking and runs at the end of the leash and starts pulling again. And again, this is only because it's taught that way. The dog doesn't know that he has to do the loose leash thing. He thinks he has to do the watching the treat thing. And of course, he doesn't do that anymore if there is no treat involved. If we teach loose leash walking, for example, with an imaginary target around us, so the dog knows that whenever he is in a specific distance to us and not further away, he can have a reward, and we mark and reward and stuff like that. Without a treat in our hand in the beginning, it is way more reliable, and the dog will learn that the distance is the thing we want and not the looking at the treat. Okay? As for everything else, I think it's a lot of fun varying rewards, and I would always do that. I would always recommend having fun with it and just trying out what we can include as a reward on our walks and even inside. So it's actually quite fun to see if our dog wants attention or snugglies or a treat or whatever. But I wouldn't pressure anybody to stop using treats completely. It's not necessary. And no, the dog is not less reliable because we're working with treats. It's just not true. And if you have any specific questions about that, feel free to send me an email. I'd love to answer those questions. And if you have a topic you would like to hear about in the podcast, again, feel free to write me an email. I love to include listeners' topics in this podcast. It's actually a lot of fun to know what you guys are actually curious about. And don't forget to like and subscribe and share the episode with anybody you think could benefit from it. That way we can help even more people together. And that's what this is about. Thanks for listening and have fun with your dogs. Until next time. Bye.